Hi everybody, Adam here. So today I wanted to talk about the concept of fitness minimalism, aka basically what is the smallest amount of work that you can do in order to still see solid results over a long period of time, consistently, and of course, sustainably. So this is what we would think of as like the 80-20 of fitness. So the 80-20 concept is essentially that you get about 80% of the results of any sort of effort, endeavor, for about 20% of the work. And then of course, you get the remaining 20% of your results from the, much bigger, much more exhausting 80% of the work. And this is something where, of course, one of the problems also is that basically beginners in any field tend to not really be able to identify what the 80-20 is in that field. They don't really understand, okay, what are the things that are actually important versus the things that aren't. And as a result, a part of sort of getting good at understanding what that 80-20 is for your given field is just about getting better at it. Having more experience, exploring, finding out just what it is that makes that whole field tick. This is also just in general an important lesson when it comes to efficiency. So if you can get, again, about 80% of the results from about 20% of the effort, then that means that that's kind of the high efficiency area. And then that remaining 20% of your results is your lower efficiency area where you're working harder, you're still getting better results, you're still getting more out of it, but of course it is a lower efficiency investment. And I tell people that this means that you need to decide sort of what things are important in your life. What things do you care about so much that you want to put 100% of the effort in, even if it means putting in that 80% of the effort that is, much harder, but only gets you 20% of the results. Those things you want to focus on, you want to give those things 100%. And then there are plenty of other things in your life that, while of course you don't have the energy, you don't have the time to be able to put 100% effort into it, it would be great if you could then identify that 20%, you could do that 20%, you could get 80% of the results and just stop it there, save yourself a lot of time, have a very minimal, high efficiency approach, and as a result, get a much bigger improvement in your life than the amount of time that you put into it would lead you to believe. So, of course, this video is going to be about that 80-20 of fitness and basically just how you can maximize the results that you get while minimizing the amount of time that you spend in the gym. As always, do not hesitate to smash that like button, help level up the channel, and of course, bless every himbo around the world with a 50% efficiency increase to their workouts. I am generally also taking on new clients, so if you are interested in online coaching, do not hesitate to reach out via the link below and I will be back in touch with you. So I wrote about this topic a lot around 2015 or so on my blog. I've actually got I think 10 or so blog posts just about this topic because it was something that was really, really interesting to me at the time. Basically around, I think 2011 or so was when Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Body book came out. And basically the whole premise of Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Body book was that you could basically just do very short, very intense workouts and basically get, better results. So it's important to understand, first of all, that this isn't really a new concept. There's been various attempts to sort of get this thing to take on in the mainstream over the years, and Tim Ferriss is just kind of the most recent one. One of the most famous examples of this is what is called the Colorado experiment. So the Colorado experiment was essentially a stunt put together by a guy named Arthur Jones, who was a fitness equipment manufacturer and fitness enthusiast. And he got together with a guy named Casey Viator, who was a bodybuilder who had basically just, he had not been training for a while, so he had lost a lot of muscle mass. He still looked, he still had a decent physique, but the whole concept was that they were going to put him on what they thought to be the best possible program for 1 month and see what kinds of results he could get. So they put him on this program. It was basically just 14 short workouts. The concept for these workouts was essentially that for each exercise that you had, you would just do one hard set to failure. So for example, if you're doing a barbell bench press, you would basically just pick up the bar, put a certain amount of weight on it, and then just do as many reps as you can, really, really pushing it to complete failure so that, maybe you need a spotter to rescue you so you don't die, and then move on to the next exercise. And you basically do that for about, 5 to 10 exercises, and then you would basically just leave the gym. And of course, because you're just doing one set per exercise, this could be really quick. This could be maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. And he trained 14 times over the course of the month, which averages out to, of course, just about one every other day. And he supposedly gained a massive, massive amount of muscle mass and just saw huge, huge increases in his muscle mass, got a lot leaner, and so on. Now, it's important to understand that there are a lot of problems with this experiment. It's not really an experiment. It's really just like an n=1, like, hey, I just tried something. There wasn't really any, it wasn't like a controlled experiment in a lab. It wasn't a study. It wasn't anything like that. It's not like they took this program, put a lot of different people through it, and then just kind of saw what their results were. No, it was one guy. It was a very flawed design. It was something where they basically set this guy up to be successful in every possible way that they could, and just so that they could kind of have a success story to brag about in particular. So there are a lot of criticisms I have about this approach in general, but the main thing to understand is that basically following this program is not likely to make you into the next Mr. Universe. So this kind of training was then called HIIT, or high intensity training. It's important not to get that confused with the similarly named HIIT, or high intensity interval training, which is a totally different thing. Uses similar principles in some ways, but again, a totally different thing. And then this HIIT style of programming has been since promoted by a lot of bodybuilders who sort of attribute it, a lot of their success to it in all or in part because of their use of a program like this. So essentially, when Tim Ferriss is coming up with the 4-hour body concept, it's really not anything different than basically what we see a lot in the HIIT style training. He, maybe took it in a slightly different direction, but essentially it was just revising the same old concept that had been around for a long time, just for a new generation who, hadn't, seen all these debates about this back in the good old days of classic bodybuilding. More importantly, it is very important to understand that research has since validated that these programs are not going to provide you with superior results. There is something to be said, of course, with high intensity. Training with more intensity is naturally going to provoke, better adaptations than lower intensity workouts. Higher intensity workouts are also going to be more exhausting and harder to recover from. And so that could also explain in part why the lower frequency of training generally worked out in these cases, because you work out really hard, you need extra recovery time, but it's fine because you're recovering extra, and then you're doing, again, these short, highly intense workouts and so on. So, in general, the approach of this is not a bad thing. It's just not likely to be the best program in the world. Overall, we've seen that essentially the single best indicator of how much you are going to grow in terms of building strength or muscle mass is basically just the volume of your training, and the fact that the volume of your training consistently increases over time. With a program like HIIT, basically your volume is not increasing over time, except a little bit when you're obviously pushing it harder, trying to get, a little bit more with each set and so on. It's not going to really, it's not like the same thing as adding volume systematically over a long period of time, and as a result, continuing to drive further growth. That said, there are some really important things to understand about the relative values of HIIT compared to basically a normal, quote unquote normal, style of programming. So the first thing is that there are diminishing returns in fitness. The more effort you put in, the less results you're going to get out of every single individual unit of effort, and the more overall effort exponentially you have to put in order to continue growing. So what that means is that basically, while you can always continue to grow by doing more and more work, in general, you're going to hit some kind of limit sooner or later, simply because the amount of effort required to be put into it is simply going to grow so astronomically relative to what you're getting out of it that you're simply going to decide sooner or later that it is not worth it anymore for you. In fact, these diminishing returns are actually pretty shocking, even just from going from one set of an exercise per week to 2 sets. So even, just that second set provides you a much smaller stimulus than that first set alone does. And then that third set is going to provide you even smaller stimulus. And then, of course, when you push it into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sets, again, all of those sets are going to, represent a smaller and smaller and smaller portion of your overall results, because, again, of the effect of those diminishing returns and the fact that your body is already used to the exercises that you have done. And so what that means is that while just doing one set of an exercise is obviously not likely to give you world-class results, and you would get more results out of doing more sets, the additional benefit from all of those added sets is going to be smaller and smaller and smaller, and just doing one set is a great way to maximize the efficiency of your program and minimize the amount of time that you are spending in the gym. More recently, long-term research was done on a program exactly like this, and I actually wrote about it recently on my blog as well. And so what they did was they essentially took a bunch of trainees, they put them through 2 half-hour-long workouts each week, and these were basically just HIIT workouts, as it were. They were just basically high intensity, very low volume, just one set, move on, and then you're done. What they found, and they did this over a period of like a huge time span, I think it was like 5 or 10 years, they saw that these people did consistently build strength, they built muscle mass, and they maintained it for that long period of time as well, which of course put them, basically significantly better than any average person walking around on the street who doesn't work out and doesn't have, basically any of the benefits of it. Of course, these gains also slowed down very quickly after the first year. And that's fine because that's basically what happens with any kind of exercise program. Like any kind of exercise program, you're going to see your results slow down very quickly after a certain period of time, simply because, again, of the effect of diminishing returns. The longer you train, the harder you train, the less you're going to get out of it. And then, of course, also it's important to add that they probably would have gained a lot more muscle mass and a lot more strength in the long term if they had just, followed a better program where they were actually increasing the amount of volume that they were completing over time. But it is important because it does validate this minimalist approach of just doing a little bit and just doing it consistently over a very long period of time. Again, even just 2 workouts, half an hour long, and basically that's it. That's basically all you need so long as you are sticking to it consistently. Another important concept to understand is the concept of building a quality versus maintaining it. So when we're talking about building a quality like strength or muscle mass, it takes a lot of volume because, of course, you are trying to really stimulate your body to adapt. You're trying to really push it out of its comfort zone in order to keep growing. However, there have been a lot of experiments, both personal and validated in research as well, where basically we discovered that when you've been used to a certain level of volume previously, it takes a lot less volume in order to actually maintain that quality than it took to build it in the first place. And so what that volume is actually about 1/2 to 1/4 of your previous training volume. So, for example, let's say that you were used to training 4 days a week. That means that you could probably train just 1 or 2 days a week. And so long as you're hitting all the major movements, that you're hitting all the major muscle groups that you want to preserve, and all the movements, of course, that you want to maintain your strength in, then you're basically able to maintain 100% of your results for a very long period of time, even though you are training significantly less. And this offers us a lot of different possibilities. So for example, you could decide, you're like, hey, you know what? I need to take a month off of training. I'm just feeling beat up. I want to just kind of switch down to doing basically nothing and just focus on other stuff in my life. That's awesome. All you have to do is just 1 or 2 quick, intense workouts per week, and that'll go a huge, huge long way towards basically just maintaining all of that so that you come back and you basically lost no strength, you basically lost no muscle mass, and you can just go from there. You could also do things where you, for example, plan different training cycles. So you could say, hey, I want to prepare for a powerlifting competition, and then after that powerlifting competition, I want to get my cardio back up, and I want to focus on preparing for an endurance event like a 5-kilometer race. You can do that kinds of stuff. All you have to do is then make sure that you are appropriately dropping down to a maintenance volume for whatever quality you're going to maintain during that off season when you're focusing on something else. You could also do things like, hey, you know that you're gonna be on a vacation. You know that you don't want to have that impact your training too much. You're going to be away for a week or 2. That's fine. All you have to do is make sure that you're getting 1 or 2 workouts per week that are intense and that are as similar to kind of the workouts that you're used to as possible. And then that's going to be, again, staving off basically 100% of any loss that you would see. Obviously, there are some caveats here. So, of course, you may or may not be able to do this for a really long period of time. Like, obviously, this will probably work well for at least a few months. But if it came to something like, 6 months, a year, 2 years, well, that might be something where, okay, the low volume is really going to cause a little bit of loss in strength or muscle mass simply because your body just then eventually gets adapted to that new level of lower volume. And then, of course, there's things like if you were to change your body weight significantly. So if, for example, you were to take a period of time off and you were to do a cut, lose some mass, in the process of that, you would see also, of course, that you're going to be losing some muscle mass naturally because that's just what happens in a cut. And as a result, you would lose some strength because, again, that's just naturally what happens when you lose a bit of muscle mass. And so the end result is that, of course, you would still lose muscle mass and strength in that cut. Again, simply because that's a very different situation for your body than, just the normal volume at a stable body weight. So that's something where, again, you can't expect that you're going to maintain necessarily 100% of your results, but you can maintain the vast majority of your results without, again, having to train very much, and while being able to focus on other things in your life, which is intensely freeing. It enables you to focus on all kinds of other things instead. So at the end of the day, is a minimalistic approach to fitness viable? Absolutely. For tons of people, fitness is not your primary focus, and it shouldn't be. That's fine. Like, you've got other stuff going on in your life. You don't want to spend all your time in the gym. That is totally, totally fine. All you need to do is just work out 2 or 3 times a week, short workouts, get it done, just one set even with all of your exercises, get out and move along with your life. That is awesome. That's still going to put you head and shoulders above most people out there in the world. And of course, this isn't going to be great if you wanted to be competitive, but this is going to make you basically like the most jacked person, that doesn't spend forever in the gym, just walking around on the street, looking good, generally having more muscle mass, more strength than the average person, and maximizing what you are getting out of surviving long-term in terms of your health. This can be really, really simple. So you can do basically just an upper body day, bench press, overhead press, some kind of row or pull down, lower body day, basically squats and deadlifts, and then maybe a third day, some kind of sprinting, short, high intensity running. You could also maybe just mix that in with your lower body squat and deadlift day as well, if you prefer. And that's basically all you would really need to do. You don't need to spend time doing all the aesthetic, work. You don't need to spend time doing all the curls and all the calf raises and everything like that. If you just do a very, very basic routine, again, 2 or 3 days a week, focusing on those major movements, you are going to go, you're going to go places. Like, this is going to cause huge changes. This is going to make you way stronger, way more jacked, and with very, very minimal time spent in the gym. So that is it for this week's video. I hope you liked it. As always, do not hesitate to comment below, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Tell me what you want to see in future videos. As always, do not hesitate to reach out via the coaching link below if you are interested in coaching, and I will be back with you. Have a great week, all of you, and I will be back in touch next week. Have a good one.